And there will be rewards for Russia if they give back what they took, because in the long term, having Russia as a permanent enemy where they're constantly attempting incursions into Europe is not a good thing for our planet. It's very, very different than China, who's made no bones about the fact that they want complete hegemony someday, and they're using what I call gradual incrementalism to get there. They are far more dangerous to us than Russia.
Yeah, but Putin is not just going to give this territory back that he's taken, because to do that would be to admit to his own people that all these hundreds of thousands of Russian troops who've been killed, it's now running at about 1,500 a day, apparently, in terms of casualties, dead and wounded, on the Russian side alone. If he was to now just give back what he's taken, that would be seen as an abject failure, and he could get driven out of office or worse.
Well, no, he won't just give it back without cost. It'll cost us something, it'll cost Europe something, but what it'll cost is not going to be the end of another Western democracy, i.e. Ukraine. It could be oil revenues, it could be a different type of alliance with Russia, it could be carte blanche in terms of having Ukraine join NATO at some point where the Russians back down on that issue. There are all kinds of cards to play, and I don't want to presuppose any of them, because actually President Trump has quite a few tools to resolve this. President Biden did nothing but a cold, despicable political calculus, which is he treated this conflict with a thermostat. He kept turning up the temperature, turning down the temperature based solely on the polls and his prospects for re-election, without consideration to the long-term ramifications for us and for our European allies. This was all about getting him re-elected. Trump doesn't have that consideration any longer.
Ambassador Sondland, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate it. Let's go back to the panel and discuss some of this. Wajahat, some of the appointments that have been made early by Donald Trump in terms of nominees, Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, the Fox host, Ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. The Secretary of State is apparently going to be Marco Rubio, the UN Ambassador Elise Stefanik. What do you make of these appointments, or the people that Trump wants to be appointed? Do you think they're all going to get through? And what would the ramifications be of having these particular people running these departments, do you think?
Well, if Trump wants them, they'll get through. Trump is the leader of the party. And very quickly, we have a difference of opinions on the following. I think a convicted criminal who was held liable for assaulting a woman and defamation and incite of violent insurrection to this day is the only president who refuses to admit that he lost. I think he's dangerous. I think that's a problem. Maybe my panelist doesn't, but I do. But I think facts matter. Donald Trump, when he ran, right, the first time, he said, I'm going to be pacifist, I'm not going to be interventionist. Well, who did he appoint in his cabinet the first time? Remember Pompeo, Gina Haspel, John Bolton, all these people were war hawks. And people forget, when Donald Trump came in, right, he promised, I'm not going to intervene, I'm not going to be aggressive. People forget. Drone strikes increased by 432%. People forget he kept us in Iraq and Afghanistan. People forget he ripped up the Iran deal. People forget he bombed Syria twice. People forget that he let Israel illegally annex the Golan Heights and move the embassy. He ripped up the Iran agreement. He killed Soleimani, right? He funded Saudi Arabia to continue genocide in Yemen. None of this is peaceful, right? This is all hawkish. Now you look at the appointments that you just mentioned. You see people like Secretary of Defense, right? The rest of the folks we can get to. But Secretary of Defense, this is putting lipstick on a pig, right? A Fox host who, by the way, bragged about not washing his hands for 10 years, says he doesn't want women in combat, almost killed someone with an axe on Fox News, Pete Hegseth. But in all seriousness, he's a Fox host who's not qualified at all. I think this one is going to be deeply problematic. The other ones we can quibble about.
He's a veteran with 2 Bronze
But wait.
Who
Let me finish.
I
did not interrupt anyone.
Okay,
Pete Hegseth, in his book, right? Read his book. In his book, he himself said he was too extreme for the military. He is an Iraq veteran. He is hawkish. He wants a civil war. He wants to embolden some of these right-wing paramilitary movements. He wants Democrats and anyone who's a leftist to be attacked as the enemy. He is not qualified compared to Lloyd Austin. You could disagree with Lloyd Austin, Biden's pick, 4-star general, which is why you're going to get a lot of folks, even Republicans on the DL say, listen, this is Secretary of Defense. Donald Trump ran on strength, security, right? The Secretary of Defense is Pete Hegseth, a Fox anchor who's sure a veteran, has no experience, and these extreme policies. This was the one really big blunder.
All right.
This was the big blunder of all the picks.
All right, Emily, your response to that?
I just think it's so blatantly disrespectful to undermine him because you don't agree with his policies as unqualified. He served in Iraq, he served in Afghanistan, he put his life on the line. Correct. After he served and did his duty to serve our country, he became a Fox News host very successfully for 10 years. And that should show you, by the way, the range of emotion and how stable, in fact, he actually is. He went overseas and saw the worst of the worst things on earth, war, death, and comes back to America and has a successful career as a media anchor. That just shows you how stable, in fact, and qualified he is. So by you undermining him by saying, oh, he's only a Fox host, it's just you being disrespectful. No, it's not.
This is putting lipstick on a pig. This is a reach. I'm just telling you, this is a big reach right now.
Okay, let me ask Clay. Clay, you want to jump in?
Let me also talk about, yeah, look, I know Pete really well, and I think it's an inspired choice, and I think it actually reflects what Trump ran on, which is the way to solve broken elements of our government is not by bringing people who were part of breaking them in the first place into higher positions of power. And this is like the universal rule here. Usually people who fix things weren't involved in breaking them in the first place. In fact, I would argue that was Kamala Harris's entire campaign. Yes, I broke everything along with Joe Biden. There isn't a single thing I would do different that comes to mind is what she said on The View. How do you expect change when you promote the same people over and over again? This argument that Pete Hegseth is dangerous is absolutely insane. I was with him on Tuesday when Trump was elected. We were doing the Fox Nation live show. I've known Pete Hegseth for a long time. Do you know who was sitting there with him? His 6 kids. He's a combat veteran. His wife is phenomenal. Look, this guy is going to be, you didn't mention that he went to Princeton where he played on the basketball team, by the way, really threatening dude there. Went and got a master's degree from Harvard. Super smart, brilliant guy, New York Times bestselling author, War on Warriors, who has laid out things that 90% of real people serving in our military would agree with. And let me also go back, Piers, something you said earlier. You were right. The reason why Trump won, economy, border, crime. But the single most effective thing that I still haven't heard anybody on the panel try to defend was the ad he ran that I want to nail here. He said, she's for they, them. Trump is for you. Yeah.